Internal people, welcome to the Tactical View here on United View, here at UVHQ with Cam. I've been drafted back in. It's real Ten Hag settings. We have a proper setup here. I underperformed. Owen comes in, plays well, should really keep the shirt. Ten Hag settings. I'm back in. I want to see if I can dislodge Owen. I've got a lot to live up to. I've seen it. You lot been doing your thing. You're ever present. Cam is the constant. But we're here to dissect the game. West Ham United's game at Old Trafford yesterday. We did well. Tactically, did well. We fought. We did all the right things. But tactically, we're going to get into it. But first of all, we're going to look at West Ham's shape. That's what we're going to get into, shall we?
Before we get into that, welcome back. It's been a while. You know, Owen stepped in, but you know, it's one of those. The key players come back in the team.
Oh, shade. Key players back in. So what are you saying? Like Owen's like a light Maguire, where he's had to just kind of fill in, and I'm like the Varane.
Well, I mean, judging by some of the comments about the size of his head, you know. Not far off Harry Maguire.
Cam's this is a new Cam. Owen, I don't know what you've done, in these few weeks I ain't been here. This is a different Cam. Smoke for no reason. But hey.
Might as well get involved, you know.
Let's go.
Right.
West Ham shape.
Yeah, so looking at their team in terms of what they've got, obviously Ben Rama would have been a bit of a threat. I think if he played as a 10, you've got a little bit more threat there, something to be worried about. Skamaka, in previous years, someone that big, that physical would have caused us real big issues, especially against Lindelof. And obviously he was injured, but that's a reason why possibly, even if he was fit, Ten Hag might have gone with Maguire to start the game here. Jarrod Bowen's obviously great player, been a bit of a live wire, caused lots of teams problems, but we've pretty much locked him up all game. Outside of that, I think obviously Craig Dawson's got a massive lack of pace, but in terms of the way West Ham play, they do tend to sit quite deep. They're very compact, so it's not often that he's going to get left in a foot race. So obviously on transition, that's something you want to target, but in general, it's not something that West Ham leave themselves open to too much.
Well, he gave the ball away to Rashford, didn't he? With sloppy pass, and then we were in from that. Cuts in, gets a shot, goes over the bar. He actually makes the block afterwards, to be fair.
Yeah.
But again, not great on the ball, not particularly good, just strong in the air.
Yeah,
old school defender.
It's one of those players you look at, how is he still playing in the Premier League? There's a few of those sorts of players where, to be fair to him, he's been all right, but there's a few of them, just how are they still getting the game in the Premier League?
There's this thing, like people say the league's amazing, it's this, that, and the other, all the players, the Prem's the best league in the world. That's what I'm saying. Dawson can come here, I think it was at Watford before that. Like, honestly, and now he's just starting every single game. Steve Cook couldn't get a game at Bournemouth in the Champ, starting for Forest every week. Like,
Even Cresswell, you've got left backs like Cresswell and Matt Targett getting a game. It's just, how was that happen?
This is what I mean. So the standard's not as good as we think it is.
No, exactly. Or maybe just United are better. Let's take it like that.
True.
A while ago, Craig Dawson would have caused us some problems. But anyway, the main points for West Ham is that they like to be compact, really well organised out of possession, and that's what United were up against. That's what we had to try and break down. So if we get into what we've seen from United, then I will just change this quickly.
Yeah.
Go into a bit of that. But yeah, it was a different approach from United this week. It was something that we haven't always seen. And in terms of the way we tried to attack them, rather than trying to play through West Ham, because they were so well organised, we tried a lot more to play around them. So in general, what that looked like was out of possession, West Ham sort of went into a 4-4-2. So Downs here up top with Skamaka to try and sort of create that 4-4-2. And whether they were pressing high or sitting deep, they tried to keep the spaces between it as compact as possible. So width-wise, they were pretty narrow and tried to lock down the centre. And in terms of the behaviour of the front two, when United had the ball with one of our centre-backs, one of the front two would go and press there, whilst the other one sort of looked after Casemiro to stop any balls sort of coming through. And one of the ways United tried to get around this was obviously if you've got a front two here, what you do want to do sometimes is create a 3v2. So we pushed Casemiro in there, Maguire and Martinez dropped wide, and we pushed Luke Shaw really high, pushed Diogo Dalot really high, and what we created, by pushing the fullbacks high and wide, we created essentially a front six. So Bruno was involved, the front three were really narrow, obviously then they're playing in the gaps between the centre-back and fullback, between the two centre-backs and the centre-back and fullback on the other side. That keeps that defence really narrow. Bruno Fernandes was often here in the sort of right spaces here, Diogo Dalot quite wide, Luke Shaw quite wide, and what that creates is a 3-1-6 structure. So you've got the three there, you've got Eriksen, who typically sort of operated in these pockets on the left-hand side there, and you've got basically a front six. Now there's a bit of fluidity in there. You've got different players sort of dropping in at times, others going in behind.
Yeah, it's not just like a flat six.
No, exactly. But in terms of the organisation, you can think of it as if it were a front six.
Yeah.
Now, part of the reason we've done that is obviously when you've got an opposition that are going to be really compact, you've got to try and stretch this back line as much as possible. So by having players in those wide areas, Luke Shaw there, Diogo Dalot there, you're overloading that back four, 6v4, really, really wide. Obviously, it means there's a lot of responsibility on Eriksen, but in terms of the first phase here, we've got 3v2 there, so we shouldn't lose the ball in that situation.
And we didn't.
We didn't.
Literally, yeah.
Most of the time we didn't. We were pretty good at that. But what it does mean is that because you haven't got many targets in the midfield area here, you've only really got Eriksen there. What it means is that quite a lot of the time, if there isn't a ball on to the front six, because West Ham was shifting pretty well, if the ball was played out to Martinez there, Bowen would get across, block the line there, Souček's across, Rice is across,
yeah, that's cutting the passing lanes loads by just shuffling across.
So we saw sometimes we were able to sort of feed those balls in there or in there, but for the most part, West Ham locked it down quite well. So it meant that for a lot of the game, we did see a little bit of frustration where we were just passing the ball side to side to side.
I didn't mind that though.
And back to De Gea.
I didn't mind. There was a point especially in the first half.
Yeah.
Maguire had it. They were like, oh, come on, hurry up. Martinez had it. Fans behind me. Oh, come on,
yeah,
come on.
You see it all around the stadium.
And I was like, yeah, and it creeps in. And I feel like it's something that is so key for this level of our development at this stage of our development under Ten Hag. I think it's something we look back in a year's time and go, remember when we used to get frustrated at? Because look at the goal we scored against Arsenal. Remember when everybody touched, I think it was Varane who ended up passing it back, or Martinez, one of them. We go from the left, back to the centre back, goes back to the keeper, then it goes to the left-hand side. Eriksen drops in, finds Bruno on the half-turn, and then we score. But that comes from being patient and making the team retreat up the field to come onto us and then go, I don't mind it.
Exactly. And I think a lot of fans now, we're getting, in general, you see in the stadium, you can feel it. The energy, just people are getting frustrated, people are getting annoyed, especially I think when it goes back to De Gea, when it goes to sort of Maguire or Casemiro in situations where they're getting pressed, people are a bit nervous, a little bit worried. And sometimes it does rub off on the players. You can see that sometimes they get nervous, they start looking up like, I need to get this forward now because people are getting a bit worried. It does rub off on the players, but I think in general, we're getting a bit more patient as a fan base. We're understanding things a little bit better.
Players aren't panicking as much as well.
No,
they're not responding to that, are they? By just hooking it down the line and trying to get it forward.
Yeah, you compare it to earlier games in the season. We were just playing it long, but we were a lot more confident, a lot more able to just, whatever's happening in the stands around you, just keep calm, keep composed, keep the ball and wait for the chance to arise to play it forward.
I did see something from a West Ham perspective, but it obviously does affect us. And I remember, and what made me remember it is because we did that show when you spoke about this guy here doing this.
Yes.
Having to come into a back three. Declan Rice did it for them.
Yes.
And what he was doing, it was causing us a bit of a problem because Declan Rice was coming into here, Dawson was there, and Kehrer was bombing on. So you say you had Bowen up there.
Yeah.
And Luke Shaw would have been back here on Bowen. And then Rashford didn't know whether to go to Dawson or Kehrer. And what was happening is Dawson, once he played a pass there and Rashford intercepted it. But because Rice was coming in there as a centre-back, he was giving us problems because he was coming deep to take it there. So Bruno or Eriksen had to go in because again he was forward as well, and so was he.
Yeah, exactly. So if we talk about the way West Ham were playing out, then what we tried to do in our pressing structure then was, and this is something that we've seen under Ten Hag that we haven't really seen too much of before, was that they dropped into, as we've said, a back three quite similar to the way we were doing things. And what we did to try and match that was we had our front three fairly narrow so that Rashford can lock onto Dawson, Ronaldo to lock onto Declan Rice, Elanga to lock onto Zuma. And we left their fullbacks a lot higher up the pitch and we potentially left their wingers a bit more free down the lines.
Yeah.
And what we saw was that our fullbacks here, which is something I've seen from Liverpool a little bit, but not too many other teams, is that our fullbacks, rather than sitting back here, just waiting for that ball to come, they were really aggressive actually. They were standing in front of them, trying to almost
Luke Shaw won so many headers from doing that. When the ball would
exactly.
go,
so that when they did play that pass there, as soon as he makes that touch, Kehrer makes that touch, Shaw's on him. And even if he's not, Shaw backs himself in that position that if Bowen's wide, which is really, realistically the only place he can be really because Eriksen's normally covering in here, Shaw backs himself that if Kehrer tries to dribble forwards, he can go and commit him there, go and bring the ball off him. And if he does step that ball in, Shaw now, he's in a condition, he's able to get off the line quickly enough, now that he's fit and he's sort of looks a bit lighter, quicker on his feet, he can get across and cover that pass quickly. So we did that pretty well, I think, in general. Which was nice to see, and I think one of the things that West Ham could have done a little bit better was that when they were building out like that, they kept Flynn Downs here, the number 10, really, really high up the pitch, which meant that they only really had Souček in this midfield area.
He's not a dictator.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can't really obviously we had Christian Eriksen there. In this area, you can't just have Souček coming in there. Benrahma had to stay really wide. He was sort of trying to get into these pockets behind Diogo Dalot. I think if he was playing as a 10 instead of Flynn Downs, we could have had some problems there. But in general, because West Ham had nothing going on at all in this area, and United were so aggressive with the way our fullbacks started, we actually dealt with that really well and stopped them playing out.
Which was weird because especially in the second half, I was, looking at our midfield and was saying it felt a little bit non-existent. Were they getting chances completely? Were we capitulating in that area? No, but we weren't as fluid on the ball. But I think it's key what Cam says there, that actually the fact that they weren't very good in that area helped us. But we still kept our compactness, we still kept our composure, we were still difficult to break down, and West Ham weren't able to just play through us the whole way forward, even though we weren't keeping the ball as well. Because any time that I thought West Ham got onto the ball, especially in the first half, when after that sort of first 35 minutes, and then we get the goal, but it kind of went downhill from there, midfield. It was all from our little mistakes. There was a bit where I think even Ten Hag alluded to it, he said it was like tennis. Like, as soon as they lost the ball, we got it back, we'd give it straight back to them and vice versa. And it was like, that little bit of calmness just went the longer the game went on.
Exactly. I think one thing that's worth saying is that West Ham there, one of the reasons they only had Souček in that midfield area is because tactically they knew we're a force now. They know that they've got to come up with something different, something a little bit obscure. So what they were trying to do is target those wide areas, get more players into those channels. And that's a credit to how much our pressing's come on. That's a credit to how much our team shape out of possession has come on under Ten Hag, because teams don't come up with obscure solutions. They don't move players out of the middle of the pitch if it's easy to play through you. They do that if they can't play through you and they need to play through other areas instead. So we've got to take that as a huge compliment. Now, in terms of what you're saying there with it becoming tennis, I want to go back to our 3-1-6 structure, and something else that's really important with that is that, again, because we don't have really any players in this area of the pitch here, the shaded area, what it means is that what West Ham are looking for is a bad ball into this area, into a player here, a bad touch, and if they win the ball in this area, it's perfect for them in transition. They can go bang, bang, draw a centre-back in, and by the time, let's say, Souček wins it off Eriksen, plays it into Scamacca, bounce it back to Rice, by that time Bowen's gone in behind. That's what they're looking for. That central zone there is their zone of pressure. That is what they're set up for. They're ready to win that ball in those areas. So what we did and it was full credit to Ten Hag for it, is that we didn't put players in those areas so that we didn't lose the ball in those situations. Now, obviously, as we said earlier, that does mean that sometimes it's harder to find balls into this area because there's only one player there, and it means that you'll be frustrated at times because you're just moving the ball around this back three. But what it does mean is that you nullify the key component of their counter-attacking play, and that rather than trying to play through, you play around their block. So it sort of benefits us in two ways. Keeps their backline pinned deep, gives us lots of presence on the last line there, and it kills their counter-attacking game. So what I want to do now is I'll bring up an example of a sequence that I think really illustrates what we did there. And yeah, we'll have a quick look at it and have a look at why it was so effective.
And that's important because I think when you see the sequences like replayed now, when it happens in the stadium, it happens so quick.
Yes.
And even when you see replays of a goal, they're focusing mainly on only the players that were involved in the goal.
Exactly, or a chance even.
Or the chance.
Yeah.
So it's important to look at it from this point of
view.
So
this is a chance that happened quite early into the game. I think it was about 3 minutes in. And you can see here, Harry Maguire starts with the ball and we'll just roll it on. So at this point here, so Scamacca's gone out to press Maguire. Flynn Downs then comes in to watch Casemiro, but Maguire plays that out to Dalot. Benrahma's out onto him, and he plays that ball then back to David De Gea. As you can see, West Ham is sliding and screening, getting across. Downs comes to mark Casemiro. Now De Gea passes it into Martinez, so West Ham are forced to shift across again, out to that left-hand side, our left-hand side. And Casemiro drops into the three here. Eriksen tucks in, and you can see Shaw inverting. Rashford, Ronaldo, Elanga, nice and narrow. Fernandes getting high up the pitch as well. And then Dalot starts to run on forwards himself. And you can see, because the ball's on that left-hand side for us, West Ham have shifted across. Now,
this one where he gets it and zings it out there.
It is, yes. The key thing here is that because West Ham are compact centrally, which you have to be to stop us playing through, where the space is in wide areas, but you can't play that pass slowly. And this is where you need the quality of player.
Yeah.
So what happens now is that because we've stretched the pitch, you've got Shaw and Dalot so wide, right on the touchline either side. Martinez plays that ball to Casemiro, quick pace of pass, and Casemiro absolutely drives that out.
Like when you kind of zing it, battle off with a little backspin on it, zoom, straight.
Yeah, that is
clean.
it. He's fired that into Dallo,
Yeah.
and that's what it has to be effective.
Great pass.
But he's fired that into Dallo.
It was
and
faster than that.
Yeah, yeah, it's in slow motion.
It was
here.
faster than that.
Yes, but it was
But
so
we get your
fast. So fast that Benrahma's not moved even. But yeah, it gets out to Dallo. By the time he gets it, he's in a bit of space. Cresswell comes out to him, but he takes his touch, drives on. Elanga does well here to make that run into the box rather than standing still. Drags Zuma with him. And then what you've got, obviously Dawson drops back in with Zuma. You've got Rashford and Ronaldo going into this sort of area here. Great ball in from Dallo. Again, a bit more pace than we've shown on the replay, but ends up with Rashford getting a shot away, gets deflected, goes out there. But the important bit is that what I really liked was, as we go on, is that it shows the structure that we're trying to implement. So rather than sort of being dead set on playing through and trying to keep players in that midfield area, we've realised you can't always do that against compact teams. So Casemiro, as we see here, he drops in to create that 3. Then we've got Eriksen there as the 1. The fullbacks push up the pitch. Fernandes gets high up the pitch as well. So we create that 3-1-6. That ball comes back into Casemiro and we zing it out to Dallo.
It's so deliberate, and it's true because, I mean, you look at where we were versus where we are or where we're trying to go, you couldn't really task Fred with coming into there, getting on a half turn and zinging the ball out like that. It's not. I'm not saying with time and space he could never hit that. Out of 10, he could probably do it 6 times.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying, but you know, when you've got someone like Casemiro and more importantly, just a system in play, even if it was McTominay having to come in there and pick it up and zing it out there, he could probably do that with time and space. But
yes.
Away from just Casemiro, where he has got the quality the other two don't have, I just love the system. I'm falling in love with the system. Yes, it's frustrating that we're only in the period where we're seeing it for 30, 35 minutes. That's a common characteristic, 30 minutes pressure. We got a goal out of it though yesterday, which we don't normally do. Normally we're going in at half time thinking we played our best football in the first 30, 35 minutes of that first half and we don't have a goal to show for it. That's what I liked about yesterday. But more importantly, even though we can't keep it up for the whole game, I wanted to fall in love with an identity this season. I wanted to see a clear way of playing, and I think we're seeing that slowly.
And it's brilliant that you're seeing now that Ten Hag's able to adapt. He's got his principles in play. We know in general how he wants to play the game, but he's able to adapt his structures, adapt the way we do things for different opponents, like this 3-1-6. We haven't seen that every game recently. We haven't seen it all the time in this game. I mean, sometimes when it's more appropriate, Casemiro will stay in front, and he's got a lot better himself at being in those positions where he's sort of got to look 360, got to be aware of what's going on all around him. But the important bit, again, in that position, you need a player, and this is the difference again between the likes of, in previous seasons, I'd say between Scott McTominay and Paul Pogba. McTominay can play those switches of play, but you get someone like Paul Pogba, you get Toni Kroos, Luka Modric, and Casemiro as well. Those sorts of players, they can play that switch, and it doesn't just get there and count as a completed pass, but it's zinged in so quickly that if the touch is good, they're in space and time to get on the end of it.
It's really
and
weird,
that's the important bit.
It's really weird. You just sparked something. How interesting would it have been to see Paul Pogba under Ten Hag, actually?
Would have loved it.
Because let's just forget the Paul Pogba stuff of what it is. Let's just do the player and the attributes he has and couple it with what we know Ten Hag is, which is getting the best out of players.
Yeah.
It would have been actually quite some sight, I think, actually.
He would have been a brilliant player. Those switches, the long passes, he's got everything in his locker. But you know what? The one player I want to see even more than Paul Pogba in this role is Frankie de Jong.
Yeah,
get him in, and what a player.
Yeah, well, some people like KG are saying, you know, he's dead to me. He's happy that everything's happened. Like, leave him, let him rot.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
I don't feel like that towards him. I know we're getting a bit off topic here, but like, the guy stuck to his gun, said he was never going to come, and we stayed around for absolutely ages trying to sign a guy who was owed loads of money, didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
And if he becomes available in the
story.
summer...
If he becomes available and wants to play here, why wouldn't he want to come now? He can see the progression we've made.
I am a bit scarred.
He's a brilliant player.
I am a bit scarred.
What I want to do now is quickly, in terms of these long passes and stuff, and the idea of sort of playing around the block rather than playing through this time, I want to look at some stats quickly. So if you look here in terms of, first of all, the teams play. So you can see our long passes, our switches, the number of crosses we've played, they're all up compared to our season average against West Ham. And that really shows you that rather than trying to play through, we've played a little bit more direct. We've gone around the sides and we've drawn them in, either one side or got them into a central position and zing that ball out wide. And then if you look at the individual player stats especially, so you look here at Christian Eriksen and Casemiro, what you can see is in terms of their long passes, that's up massively. And the reason I haven't used switches there is that in terms of the way switches is sort of calculated, for that That particular metric, the way it's defined on this website, is that it's got to travel at least 40 yards of the width of the pitch. Now, obviously, Casemiro, in general, seemed to be starting fairly central on the pitch. So
he's very rarely going to be served to switch it from the left to the right or the right to left because he's central.
Exactly. So if he's starting central, he's not going to be able to get 40 yards. So for him, we're looking at long passes for that sort of ball.
Yeah.
Same with Christian Eriksen. And what you can see now, if we look at these, the stat for Bruno, is that he was playing pretty wide on the right, especially. And you can see that he made a point when he got his head up, he got the ball in these sorts of areas. He made a point where possible of zinging that ball out over to the left side. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but he got a lot of pace on those passes. And you could see clearly, Erik ten Hag has told him, get that ball out to the left side and do it with pace. Zing it out there as quick as you can. And you can see his switches are up. I think it was 4 per game, 4 against West Ham for him, when normally he plays 1 per game. So you can see in the numbers, you can see in the way we played, in the structure we set, that it's a clear game plan, a clear set of ideas from Erik ten Hag, and that is exactly what we want to see. For too long now, under previous managers, it's been sort of vibes and random, just
roll
random,
them out, see if you could do something, get Bruno on the ball, he'll find a magical ball,
exactly.
Get Rashford running at people, something will happen.
Exactly.
Martial, a bit of magic, Pogba volley or something like that. 100%. And again, I take it back to what I've been asking for, and we've all been asking for.
Yeah.
Just a way of playing that actually, it by and large is kind of being the same thing, but it's changing game to game. He's coming up with not only the right types of patterns of play for certain games against certain oppositions, but in terms of picking the players. We've seen in recent games where he's picked Fred straight off the back of a bad Newcastle game, but he's the right player for the Spurs game, but not the right player for the Chelsea game. Then he doesn't start again in this game because it's not the right game for him to start against West Ham. He's got a different role. Same with McTominay. So I just like Sancho not playing now. Did Elanga come in and light it up? No.
Elanga wasn't great.
He wasn't great, 100%, but the reasoning of him getting that start was absolutely justified, to the point where Elanga probably played a 5 at best.
Yeah.
I think we gave him a 6 in the player rating just because we was all happy, but a 5 at best. And Jadon Sancho still didn't get a look in.
Exactly.
He put Bruno onto the right.
I mean, even Christian Eriksen's role yesterday was completely different to what he's done at other times. At other times he stayed more central, tried to get on the ball a bit more, but yesterday he was sort of drifting out to the left side quite a lot, whereas Bruno was playing more on the right. And his role was just sort of trying to be in those pockets, not necessarily getting the ball, but trying to attract West Ham players so that we could play through the lines and almost miss him out a lot of the time.
Goes with what Christian Eriksen said to us, didn't he? Like, don't care where I play.
Exactly.
Just as long as I can try and get on the ball or influence the game, I don't care.
Exactly. So the last thing I wanted to talk about today was one big chance that West Ham had. It didn't end up in a shot. Well, it ended up in a shot, but I think Bowen was offside, so it didn't really count. But it was one where a lot of people have been criticising Marcus Rashford for his role in where he was sort of being, because I think there's a general perception that wingers should track back to the fullbacks, and that's fine, that sort of makes sense. But where this has come from is a throw in here for Cresswell on this side. So this is the general organisation of where the players are. Obviously, you can see that West Ham have got the ball, so they're a little bit wider than we are. And the way we've set up to defend this is obviously we tried to have that extra player in midfield. So they've got Casemiro there, as well as Eriksen. You've got Bruno's a bit higher up the pitch to try and stop that ball going back to Rice. And as we roll it on here, this goes in, the throw gets played into Scamacca, as we can see there, and he manages to roll Eriksen.
Rolls it straight out, yeah.
What Souček's done really cleverly there is he's nipped in front of Rashford, so Rashford's got to focus all his attention on what's happening that side rather than what's going on behind him, which is fine because in general we have the extra player here, so we've got to compensate for that by marking that midfielder with Rashford coming across.
And if the ball goes out there, you've got to slot across.
Exactly. You've then got to slide across. Yeah. But what happens here is Eriksen gets held off by Scamacca, uses his body really well there. The big striker in that situation. He sort of carries it across the pitch, ends up playing it out to Thilo Kehrer. At this point, Casemiro is sprinting to get back in. Luke Shaw goes and tries to get himself involved. Kehrer carries it.
Travels a little while. I remember thinking someone was going to engage him and then he just gives it.
Yeah, it's almost like Luke Shaw panicked initially. Sprints out to Kehrer. Everyone's assuming that ball's going into Bowen. Kehrer sort of skips infield with it, gets past a couple, and then ends up with Bowen coming through for the shot, which ends up being offside. But it was just a little point there to mention that actually, rather than Rashford being in the wrong there for not marking Kehrer initially, he did have a role, he was doing the right thing tactically, and that's an approach that a lot of teams take there with the winger tucking in to mark the extra midfielder, to give you that extra man there, Casemiro, to mop up if that ball goes down the line or if the ball gets played into this area.
I know we didn't really have time to go into it in full detail, animation-wise, etc. But I just couldn't finish off this video without talking about Diogo Dalot because
brilliant player.
I just feel like I don't know if we can get just like a blank canvas just to talk about him just really quickly. He was just unbelievable. And I'm not even bored of saying it. I'm not, because I just think the engine he's showing, the robustness he's showing is one thing, and the athleticism he's showing to keep going. 90th minute, great set of lungs, loads of gas left in the tank. That's one side of things. But actually, just technically, just off the cuff now, just technically, he's just been unreal. You know, Gary Neville was talking about it, and it was so refreshing to hear Eric Ten Hag talk about it with Gary Neville, because he's giving Gary Neville the respect to say, listen, you're right back. You've been there, you've done it here, you've been one of the greatest. But Gary Neville's picking up on the fact that defensively and where to be, defensive headers, right place, right time, interceptions, right place, right time, duels, right place, right time, but not by chance. He is really, really becoming a better player.
It's every single week. You can tell he goes home, he watches where he's been positionally, and he improves it. Obviously, the analysts and Ten Hag will be helping him with it. Yeah. But you can tell he's going home, he's doing his homework, he's making sure he knows the right things. So, for example, in this 3-1-6 system, if we lose the ball here and it gets out to Benrahma, Diogo Dalot knows what he's got to do. And sometimes his recovery run won't necessarily be to Benrahma. It'll be tucking in there and dealing with one of the players inside, knowing that Maguire's going to go out and commit there. But Dalot, he's able to spot these situations now much better than he ever has been before. And he's much more he's much more tuned in, much more alert. And one of the things you see was that, let's say we're pressing from West Ham on this side, so we'll set up in there as if it was their goal kick there, with you've got Declan Rice dropping in here, you've got Cresswell pushing up, Benrahma tucking in there, Jarrod Bowen pushing up behind there. And obviously, one of the things that United are doing really well now is when we're pressing, we're really compact on the ball side. So rather than just trying to press the entire pitch, which happened far too much under Ralph Rangnick, if the ball's on this side, we'll get the whole team across. So Martinez will come across, Maguire will come across, Dalot will come across there.
All as a unit, yeah.
And what happens is West Ham did look sometimes for those switches of play. And Dalot reads that so well. As soon as that player is in time and space, and that foot gets lifted up, a bit of backlift, Dalot's there.
Yeah.
And he's quick enough, he's strong enough physically, and he's good enough in the air. He anticipates that, he gets the header, but he moves his feet so well to make sure that header almost always goes forwards.
Like a nice little cushion into someone's feet or chest,
exactly,
where we can play. And he fought quickly for the throw-in as well, that actually led to the goal.
Yes.
Because I remember, again, few fans, hurry up and throw it.
It's taken too long, Casemiro was coming back
and he has
here.
it in one hand, and he's pointing, he's waiting. And I know it's an easy throw to Eriksen in the end, but again, the patience to take his time and pick the right throw, which I remember actually, throw-ins for us been disgraceful.
Yeah.
Basic throw-ins, like we were just always losing it from that. And yes, I know Eriksen's in time and space, but the sequence that led to the goal came from, again, Dalot in the throw-in. Don't underestimate that.
Yeah, no, he's been fantastic, and it's a credit to him. The only thing is, as Ten Hag said after the game, there's only one of him. If we could get 5 or 6 Diogo Dalots, he could play a lot of positions on the pitch.
Yeah.
Because his role now as a fullback, he's got to do pretty much everything. At times, he's playing more inverted. He's playing almost as an 8 or a 10 in these areas. Other times, he's getting wider. He's got to deliver balls in as a sort of traditional fullback, or even a traditional winger would do. At other times, he's sort of sitting here in the build-up as a defensive mid. Diogo Dalot is basically playing every single position on the pitch at different times in the game. It is brilliant to watch.
Yeah.
The final thing, we've got to mention it. What did you say about Christian Eriksen before the game? There's no point in us animating the sequence because it doesn't do it justice.
No.
Go and look at the slow-mo replay.
The video will get taken down because we actually have to show the goal to say what we mean. But I mean, from a tactical point of view, you can break down tactics all you want.
Yeah, but technical quality.
Exactly. When you have a player doing what he done yesterday for that ball, and it would go unnoticed. Like, he literally, in normal speed, you can't even tell he's taken a look to the left to see where Rashford is. But there's that slow motion replay. I think it's the 3rd replay on the Sky replay. Go check it out. When you just see him just bring it's like poetry in motion. He just brings the ball down off his chest, then onto his foot. Has a quick look. He probably just sees a red blur.
Yeah.
Periphery, and just puts it on absolute sixpence. And those are the things where, on one hand, the manager can't legislate for mistakes. Like when the system's doing what it's doing, but people give the ball away. It's not on the manager. It's just we was in the right position, but the execution was wrong. But the other side of it is this side of it. You need quality players because we can make these moments happen. We can create these sort of environments for players to be in good positions. But when you need that bit of quality on the ball, when you need the desire from Rashford to go smashing in to the back of Kerr saying, I want that ball, that's my ball, you can't necessarily always coach that. And that's just testament to those players.
I mean, it's in slow-mo, and genuinely, if you blink, you would miss it. Look, it's like, even in slow-mo, it's bang.
It's so good.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Go and watch that. It's amazing.
Exactly. Top stuff on the tactical view. Let us know if you have enjoyed the show. Have I made the cut to make it back? Or do you like a little bit of a mix? I mean, sometimes Owen, sometimes me. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes maybe even KG.
Get KG in instead of me.
Jesus.
Sub me out for KG.
No, because KG, we've seen it with the scout. Well, it's not really him, but his cousin who does the scout reports.
Yeah.
We've seen they're much of a muchness, part of the same Nigerian family. They're very the same. No form of tactical breakdown, just
Like the
vibes.
stick.
100%.
KG's cousin.
Let us know if you've enjoyed the show, guys. Smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. You are going to get a Flex and KG show tomorrow, 6 p.m. as we lead into the Europa League. Tonight, 7 p.m. set-ins. It's full view. You lot know we've got to get onto some people. Some people got a lot to answer for. No spoilers. So make sure you guys check that out 7 p.m. tonight as well. Smash a like on this video. And if you'd like to join the UV Members Club, make sure you guys do so below. The link is in the video description below. And as always, big up to Cam for smashing it on the Tactical View, his social. Yeah, we're out of it. Peace.